Where is everybody?
Sleep.
Yeah. Okay. And I know some people couldn't make it today, but we will. It is being recorded and it will be posted. So for those who are not here, you can. And there's only going to be 2 more lectures now and this afternoon. So if you snooze, you lose. So a little bit less existential stuff today, I think. I'll try to stay on topic. And so we'll talk about Scrum, which is one of the agile methodologies. And then in the end, we'll talk a little bit about the teams. And we'll talk more about that in the afternoon. But I would like for you to, between the end of this lecture and the start of the next lecture, figure out when you want to have your team meetings. And I will give you the slots, the available slots. There will only be 8 available slots, 8 teams. So you better jump on a particular slot if you need it badly. Right? Okay. And I will have to keep my phone on today because we lost the sound at some point yesterday, and I was happily unaware. Right? So if something happens again, I need to. Otherwise, I never keep my phone on during a lecture. Okay. So managing with Scrum. I will start to just give you a flavor for kind of a real world project that I went through. Then we'll talk a little bit about Agile today. What is the status of Agile today? I mean, is this just a new fad, a new way of building software, or is this something that's going to stay? How wide is the adoption? That kind of stuff we're going to talk a little bit about. And then we're going to dive into Scrum, which is the methodology and it is the de facto standard Agile methodology. And so we're going to go into details of that because that's what you're going to use when you develop your web shop or whatever it was. So a real world project. I I guess it's natural, I come back to internet advertising as an example of things. And it's nasty, right? It's nasty stuff. But so it's like 8 years old now, but you know, it's the same principle still. So here's the New York Times, the business section page from a few years ago. And we can see here that there are 4 advertisements, right? And here is a simplistic view of how internet advertising works. Display advertising. We're talking about the kind of the banner ads, right? The graphical ads. I'm not talking about paid search, the search ads. I'm not talking about kind of contextual ads, which AdSense does, for example, Google's AdSense product. But display ads, the way it started, advertising online. So this might be obvious to you, but hopefully not. I shouldn't say hopefully, but maybe not to all of you. So I'm going to go through it anyway. So this is kind of how it works, right? You're a user here, and you request from some publisher's web server a page, right? Request a page. You get a page with some HTML back, right? The browser, which is the user's client agent in this situation, gets this HTML, starts to parse it, and start to render it in the application, typically a web browser, right? Starts to render this. Now, eventually, it's going to run into resources that it needs to render to the user, which it doesn't have, right? Represented by tags, right? Requests, URLs for additional resources that might reside elsewhere. And that is really, if you think about it, that is kind of one of the most central, it's very simple now in retrospect, but the most central ideas with the World Wide Web. That what you're looking at is not something that comes from only one place, but it can come from multiple different places. And you are happily unaware of this, right? To you, it might look like one coherent thing, right? So it's really a beautiful thing to be able to distribute all this information, or the collection of the information from various sources, right? Now, so in this particular page, since we're talking about internet advertising, there is a request for an image, right? An ad, right? When the browser sees that request, realizes it doesn't have it, it makes that request to whatever the host name is, right? So an ad request goes to some form of ad server, which in 99 times of 100 or even more is different from this server. Right? The ad, that's a different, completely different system. Right? The publisher, they're publishing some website, and they have they have a content management system that is publishing things. But advertising, it's complicated, and there's a lot of technology around that. So they typically don't have the expertise to do that themselves. Right? So you, in effect, outsource the advertising to somebody else, some network ad server, which could be Google or somebody else. Right? So a request goes to this ad server, and part of this, as part of this request, typically some content, some context is passed to the ad server. For example, the ad server knows right away by looking at the IP address of the incoming request, they know where this user is located right now. Right? So they can tell this is a user coming from Växjö, for example, or a user coming from Denmark, whatever it is. Right? There might be other information passed along here as well. This user could potentially be known by this web server. It might be have signed up for an account, right, to improve the experience on this website, right? So this web server, this publisher might know that, you know, this user is interested in finance, right? So when we're going to serve an ad to this user, since this user is interested in finance, maybe we should serve them an ad related to finance, right? Because the advertiser is mostly interested in reaching people who are interested in their message, right? So as part of this ad request, some personal information about the user might be passed along, in order to give the ad server as much information, as much input as possible in order to determine which is the best ad to serve to this particular user at this point in time. They might even take into account the weather, right? They might serve you an ice cream ad if it's sunny outside, right? These systems are extremely smart. And the scary thing about them is that they don't really know how they work, because there's so many signals. So in order to figure out why did this particular request from this user over there get served this particular ad, oftentimes it's not clear. Right? So you don't really know. And that is kind of scary in itself, right? Because as we know, things can go astray if we use algorithms to solve all problems. A little side note here. Interesting thing about this, I read a year ago or something, that you know, there's a lot of talk about machine learning today, right? So we're teaching these autonomous or semi-autonomous agents or robots or whatever you want to call them. We're teaching them stuff, right? So they become better and better and better. Why? what are we using to teach them? Well, we're using the information we have, the information that exists. Well, guess what? A lot of that information has a lot of prejudice, a lot of toxic assumptions baked into them. And these toxic assumptions and all this prejudice is now, I mean, it might not have been malicious from the beginning, but this is now being used to teach the robots about the world. So we're just passing on our prejudice onto the robots. And that is dangerous because there's a lot, if you analyze text, for example, you can tell how much racism, for example, is underneath the covers. And this, we're just happily passing this along to the robots now. So we're getting racist robots. And who's going to do something about that? Who's going to stand up and say, guys, this is not okay? We're kind of institutionalizing the societal, the cultural prejudice that we've created over thousands of years and passing it on to somebody else now without thinking too much about it. And who's going to say something about that? Who can say something about it? And who's going to listen if somebody says something about that? It needs to kind of be at a higher level, right? Some governing body at a higher level. But we know how poorly FN, or United Nations, works. Right? I don't know. It's interesting, challenging times. That was a side note. Now, so the ad server here gets all this data about the user and all this context, right? And now the ad server determines which ad to serve. And the advertisers, this ad server has essentially two UIs. The advertiser can go into the system and specify a campaign. I want to reach, I'm an advertiser. I want to serve 10 million ad impressions in May of 2018, and I want to reach users in Scandinavia in the middle of the day, only interested in serving my ads, showing my ads in the financial section of the site. For some reason, I want to show green ads to Swedes and blue to Danes, because I think that the Swedes respond better to green and the Danes better to blue. For whatever reason, it might be true, I don't know. And also, we don't want to saturate users, so we don't want to show the same ad more than twice to any individual user, right? Because people kind of get sick of seeing the same ad more than once. Furthermore, we want to optimize our click-through rate, right? That's what we're interested in. We're interested in driving traffic to our destination, our landing page, right? Some ad campaigns have nothing to do with that. Some ad campaigns are only interested in branding, right? Just communicating a message, right? They don't really care if you click on it or not, right? So it's just different what the objective is by the advertiser, right? So the advertiser uses a UI to specify what they want. So this, for example. Now, the publisher, in order for the advertisers to be able to target the financial section of the site, the publisher must make that available, right? The publisher determines what the advertiser can use to target, right? I mean, if the publisher doesn't have a financial section of the site, clearly the advertiser shouldn't be able to buy advertising in the financial section of the site. So the publisher essentially slices and dices their property, their media property, in a way that they feel is the most attractive, because what they're doing here is creating a product, right? They're creating a product which they are then selling to the advertiser, right? And there's a number of different cost models here when you buy ad space. Now, if we look at that guy, only that guy, as this, essentially, which are the ad servers themselves that are actually responding to the HTTP request to return an ad. these ad servers are lightning fast. So they cannot access some, so a request comes in, it doesn't have time to go consult some database about this, here are the signals that are coming in, here's the user's context. They have no time to consult some database, it takes way too much time. They must have things in memory here through configuration files. And the configuration files are generated by what advertising campaigns have been put into the system. Right? So the advertising campaigns are into the system, and then you extract the data that you need in order to select the right ad when you actually get the request. So that's essentially how that system works. And in April 2012, this system served 45 billion ads a day. I don't know what it is today. I would imagine it's 100 billion ads per day. When I started at this company that was doing, kind of invented this stuff, my boss proudly told me, what did he tell me? He told me that we broke 10 million ads a day, 1998. 10 million ads a day, he said proudly. Like 1 month later, it was 100 million ads a day. It was just exploding. And the system was just bursting at the seams all the time. Right? And this was back in the day when the evaluation of publicly traded companies was very much based on how many ads they served, regardless of whether they actually made any money from the ads or not. So these were really the rah-rah days. I remember once we found a bug. There was this one company that was valued at like I think $100 a share or something like that, right? And completely based on the advertising that we helped them serve, right? They bought this service of serving ads from us, and we found a bug in our system. It turned out that their numbers were 10 times as big. The reported numbers were 10 times as big as the actual numbers. And, you know, the stock just plummeted. Now, it's a little pet project. And this is nothing new anymore. So, this is true. Ads in the finance section of a site can be priced higher than in other sections. Right? So people in the finance industry are willing to pay more money to reach a user in the finance section than, for example, what the sports industry is prepared to pay for a person visiting the sports section. Because it's more likely to generate revenue in the back end somehow. Right? So, if we can get more, I'm a publisher, I can get more money out of the finance section, well, I could probably price ads in other sections higher if I know that the user who is watching it is actually a finance section reader, right? Because it's mostly about reaching the people. Of course, it cannot be completely out of context of where they are, right? But a finance section reader who visits the sports section of a site is not going to be pissed off if we serve them a financial services ad in the sports section of the site. And the advertiser is happy. Right? So, here's an idea for a project. Offer advertisers the option to target an audience. Not only a section of the site, but an audience. You target the people rather than where they are. Right? Doesn't sound too difficult. Right? If you start to inspect this, it turns out that every single subsystem of this big system needs modification for something fairly small like that. We're creating a new targeting criteria, really. Finance section readers. Everything needs to be modified. And at the same time, this is generating billions of dollars, so it needs to be maintained, right? We need to grease the wheels to make sure that we continue to make money so we can keep the lights on and so we can invest in new projects. That's how business works. In addition, we have at least 10 concurrent projects going on. We have engineering teams that are specialists. So we have an engineering team that's working only on ad servers because this is super high traffic application, different skills than, for example, log processing, which is not high traffic, it's high volume, enormous volume, but kind of batch-like processing. This is a real-time response time, right? So this must be very quick. This doesn't matter if it's so quick as long as the throughput is big enough, sufficient. So this, by the way, is all over the place now. This was kind of semi-new 10 years ago. Semi. All right, so let's move to Scrum now. So this is a slide from yesterday. We say that the problems with traditional methodologies, and but traditional, I mean, so this way of doing one thing at a time, right? And this is known as most of you probably know that this is known as kind of the waterfall process, right? You do one thing at a time. And the problems with it is, just to repeat from yesterday, that it assumes a predictable world, assumes that we know the requirements from the beginning, because if we don't know the requirements from the beginning, how can we plan? Because we need to plan before we execute. So we need to have the requirements before we plan, because we need to plan before we execute. It also assumes that the competitive landscape doesn't change, and we know that's just nonsense. It changes all the time. We assume that stakeholders don't change their minds. They change their minds all the time. And we assume that we have all the resources available throughout the project, which is not going to happen if the main cash cow breaks. People are going to work on that. It doesn't matter. This project is just, they couldn't care less about this if the cash cow is broken. And, as I said, developers, they hate changing requirements. Really, really hate it. And so the kind of overall solution I presented yesterday was this agile methodology, which is incremental plus iterative. So you pick one chunk of functionality that has some value, you get that right. When you're done with that, you move on to the next piece of functionality. Right? So you don't need to know all the requirements for the second piece of functionality when you start out doing the first piece of functionality. So don't worry about that. Right? Oftentimes, when you try to design everything up front, I don't know how many times at one company I was at, we had about 6-month release cycles. Right? This is back in 2005, 6 or something like that. So 6 months we released a new version every 6 months. Right? And so after we release one version, we're going to start to work on the next version. Typically what happens is when it comes to, okay, so let's gather requirements for the next version. Typically what happens is that we have already produced the designs, all the functional requirements for half of what we're going to put into the next release because we failed to deliver them in the previous release, the one that just closed. Right? So we already have all the designs ready. So that work that was done to produce these functional specs and design documents that never resulted in any code, wasted work, right? Unless you use it for the next release, but with the next release, because you might think that, well, even if we don't implement it now, it's good to do the design now, so we're going to get a head start later on. But the thing is, later on, something else is more important, so you decide not to do this. You deprioritize this because something else has popped up and it's now more important. So all the work you did to flesh out the details of this piece of functionality that didn't make it into the release, that work is waste. It has no value. But sadly, in most organizations, you still get a check mark next to your name if you deliver it. Right? You've delivered something that has been assigned a value in the culture in which you exist, but it never really materialized. No, the value never materialized. So we shouldn't have done it in the first place. We could have used that time maybe to add more some other functionality into the previous release, instead of wasting time with stuff that will never see the light of day. So, this is what we do all the time in Agile. You learn by feedback, some form of feedback. And then you take this feedback into account and you adjust what you did. Right? So, Agile software development relies on empirical data. You have continuous deployment. This isn't, I'm talking about an ideal world now, right? Continuous deployment, which means that your service is continuously rolled out. There's no a whole lot of individual releases and stuff. Continuously rolled out to your end users. The purpose of it might not be to make any money. The purpose of it is to get it right. Is to throw it out there. Was somebody asking me yesterday with alpha and beta versions of games these days, why do they do it? In order to get user feedback. And with continuous deployment, you get the feedback faster, right? Shorten the feedback loop. Everywhere in Agile, the key is to take empirical data into account, take data from your environment, from users, from your bug tracking system, whatever it is from your build system, take that empirical data into account and get it back as soon as you possibly can and modify things. Because the longer it takes for the data to come back to you, the longer it takes before you can address if there were any issues related to it, and the harder it is to do it. Because you've made assumptions that based on previous assumptions that are no longer valid, and it just becomes hairy. Continuous integration, meaning test automation and continuous builds of your system. This gives you quality feedback. Automation of this. You check something in, automatically gets built. If there is a bug, if you're breaking anything, if you're breaking something, if the build breaks, you got to get notified right away. And in many corporations today, they have a light and a sound if somebody breaks the build, right? Everybody hears it. Somebody checks something in, automatically it builds, build is broken, sound goes off. There's nothing more important than dealing with that, right? So, and imagine if you had not automated this, it might have taken a day before you realized that you've broken something, right? So automate, automate, automate. Test automation is the same thing, right? You run automatic tests after you actually made the build, the automatic testing kicks in, and if you find any bugs, of course you're not going to find all bugs, if you find any bugs, you get notified right away. Short feedback loop. And now efficient and effective reaction to feedback feasible through continuous refactoring. You know what refactoring is? Yeah? Okay. Because if you're not continuously refactoring, then you're going to have a code base that is more difficult to modify. Because we are saying here, we want feedback, 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 and the purpose of the feedback is to modify the code base. And so if it's too cumbersome to modify the code base, well then there's no value to the feedback, right? So there's many pieces that need to fit together in order for this to work really smoothly. You are not going to get to this, test automation and continuous deployment. Well, if you do, you know, power to you, right? make me very happy, but it is not something we're requiring here at all. They typically don't even get to this in kind of master level courses unless we're thinking about having a course particularly on this kind of engineering practices for agile software development. So, agile today. So they sent out a survey. 94% practice agile. 94%. This is the de facto standard. I'm not saying it's the best thing since sliced bread, right? I'm not saying it will continue to be the best forever, but relative to what we had before, what we're comparing it to, relative to the situation we had when those brainiacs got together in Snowbird, Utah, and formulated Agile Manifesto, relative to then, it's beautiful. Things are beautiful today. It's been a revolution in software development. And what do they claim are the benefits of adopting an agile way of developing software? Ability to manage changing priorities. And we will see exactly why that is. Project visibility. Right? Outside of the project, they now know what's going on. Productivity is going up. Delivery speed, time to market is getting better, and team morale is better. Right? This is, you might not understand how important this is. There was some study a few years ago, I forgot the exact numbers now, but they asked people to what extent they're engaged in their job. And the numbers were staggering. There were only something like 20 or 30% who claimed that they were engaged. There were even more who claimed that they were actively disengaged. They don't give a crap. Right? I mean, how can you possibly expect them to produce anything good if they don't care? Right? And the thing here is that, so how can you make them care? Well, the traditional tools that we've had is either the carrot, right? Carrot, right? Come get it, right? Carrot could be bonus, could be high salary, could be massage chairs, whatever it is, right? Or it's the stick, right? If you don't do this, I'm going to put you on some form of performance management plan, and if you don't deliver, you're going to be kicked out, right? Those are traditional ways. But it turns out that cognitive workers, like information workers, like ourselves, we're not as motivated by money as people think. If we make enough money to be, so we feel comfortable, after that, it's not money that is making you go that extra mile to really engage in what you're doing. It's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Those are the three. You need to feel, people need to feel a reason to do what they're doing, that it's somehow, I'm putting in this effort for something more than my own self-interest. I have a purpose. I'm part of a group of people here. We're trying to do something, right? That's purpose. Autonomy. I have the freedom, enough freedom to choose how to do my job. And mastery. I'm provided with the ability to actually become a master at what I'm doing, to become good, to feel that I'm good at what I'm doing. It's awful to do a job where you feel you suck at it, right? It's not at all as much fun, right? So give people the ability to become good at what they're doing. more agile today. What methodologies are used? 58% are now using Scrum. We're not going to talk about anything else. It doesn't mean that the other ones are irrelevant to anything. We just focus on the more or less standard here. Right? 10% are using Scrum and XP. XP is extreme programming. That's more engineering practices like pair programming and stuff like that. And so what people do is that they use Scrum to manage the project, and inside of each iteration, we'll get to that, they might use extreme programming if they want to. And some hybrids. Kanban, Scrumban is a combination of Kanban and Scrum, but this is the one you need to know. And so these companies that are using Agile, what are they using? Which aspects of Agile do they find important? Iteration planning. So things are divided into iterations, and they plan these iterations. That's one aspect of Agile. Daily stand-ups. Every day the team meets to make sure that everybody knows what is going on. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. They don't need to know the details, but in particular, they need to know if somebody is waiting for them. Is this guy waiting for me to deliver something? Well, I didn't know. Well, with a daily stand-up, it will take no more than 24 hours for you to know. So you cannot sit there at the end of the iteration saying, well, you know, this guy didn't, my teammate over there, you know, look at him, he's barely awake. He didn't deliver to me what he was supposed to deliver. Well, my question is, well, did he know? Well, you know, we talked about it at the beginning of the iteration. Yeah. Okay, you've been sitting here waiting and not telling this guy that you need something now? It's your fault, you know. That's what this meeting is for, to make sure that everybody knows. That's it. It's not reporting to some higher authority what you've done in the past week or anything like that. It's about communicating with your team members. Retrospectives, and this is a beautiful one. Retrospective is a short meeting at the end of each iteration where the team reflects on how it went. For example, how did communication go? Right? Our daily meeting, daily stand-up meeting, you know what? It seems like some people, who knows what they do late at night because they're so tired at 10 a.m. in the morning when we meet. So maybe we should move that morning to 1 p.m. instead. So it's a way to tweak the process for how you work with each other. Maybe we shouldn't use Slack. Maybe we should use Skype instead. Whatever it is. Iteration reviews. We're going to get to this as short iterations. So they asked them, so would you consider, these respondents, would you consider your agile projects a success? And 98% of them say yes. This is success. So the agile train has left the station long ago. Right? And you'd be hard-pressed to find a job today in an organization where they're not using agile. Of course, if you work at the Defense Department, or maybe at a big corporation, you work at Saab producing airplanes, right? They might not use agile, but they are also, I've been talking to them, they are also trying to separate mission-critical things from not so mission-critical things, and so use agile for as much as they possibly can. Right? So this is the future, and it's here. So I would say agile is a disruptive social technology. It fundamentally changes how any organization, any group of people is accomplishing something. Because this is what it's about here. We're talking about efforts which are too big for one person to do them, right? So we have a group of people who are going to accomplish something together. And how do they go about doing that? I have a good friend from or not a friend anymore, an old colleague from New York. He uses Agile at home to run his household. Maybe a little bit nerdy, right? But you know what it does? What it does for him? Let's see here. It's not really here. It helps him focus on what's the most important thing. Right? It helps it. There was one story related to this. Then we take a break. There was this American industrialist Carnegie. Right? It's like one of like Vanderbilt or Roosevelt. Or fancy American families. American aristocracy, they exist. They pride themselves with being a meritocracy in the U.S. that, it's based on what you've done, not who gave birth to you, but it's just nonsense. It's an aristocracy in the U.S. too. They just have worse taste than the European one. I was going to say, yeah, Carnegie. He like the Asian emperor, he sent for a consultant and asked this consultant, I need to become more productive, right? I'm not happy with my performance. Can you help me? And just like the wise man in the Far East, the consultant went away, came back with one piece of advice. He said, every day, the first thing you do every day is to write down a list of the most important things you need to do. Every day. Because we have this, we tend to trick ourselves and we tend to do a lot of things that we interpret as urgent, right? But we tend to misjudge urgent for important. A message comes into you on some of your 5 or 6 different channels, be it email or Facebook Messenger or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever you use these days, right? Pops up, right? Gets my attention. Somebody's asking me a question. I respond to that question. An email comes in. Pretty simple answer. I just need to look something up and I can respond to that answer. And after doing a few of those things, I feel that I've accomplished something, right? Because I've actually carried out tasks. Tasks are coming to me, and I carry them all out. I feel really, really good about my behavior, right? It just turns out that all the important stuff is lying there still, right? So what should be done first is the urgent and important, right? Okay, so let's take we can probably take a 15-minute break today. And we are live again. Yeah, I'll get to the team meetings at the end of this lecture. So, Agile is just, maybe it is the best thing since sliced bread. Right? So, if it's so fantastic, let's go. Right? Why? The evidence is out there, right? All this anecdotal evidence about how much better Agile is than the traditional waterfall kind of rigid way of doing things. Well, let's do it. Problem is, it's really, it's simple and really difficult at the same time. The ideas and the whole concept is, as you will become clear to you later on here, it's very natural, right? You have a big problem you're going to solve. Instead of solving this problem like you do when you build a house, right, where you first you hire an architect and you develop this floor plan, and then you build the foundation and make sure you get the sewage and the water everywhere. You don't need to do that here. It's software, right? It's easy to move a wall, change the dimensions of the foundation. No problem. You don't need to decide everything beforehand, right? It's very natural, I think. You have facing a big problem. You try to, and you guys are kind of, your profession will be problem solving in a way, using information technology to solve problems. So it's very natural to break down a problem, a big problem, into smaller problems. And now you attack one of these small problems, get that right, and show it to whoever asked you to do this. And is this what you want? And if not, I can modify it a little bit for you. And if this is what you want, great. Then which is the next thing you think is most important for me to do for you? Right? But the problem is mindset. First of all, people need to understand why. Why are we doing this? When I was part of doing this kind of transformation from one way of building software to another way of building software, I had people who quit. Because in Agile, since we are embracing change, there will be change. These developers, many of these developers who quit, what they were used to was to be given a bunch of papers specifying the requirements, right? This is what you need to do. And then, I don't want any changes. I want you to walk away. I close the door to my office, and I work on this now. That provides me with a sense of certainty, sense of familiarity. Yes, the question?
Oh, well, that makes me think about autism.
Yeah? Autism?
People with kind of that leaning that way. A lot of them are programmers, yeah?
Yeah.
And they like it this
Yes,
way.
yes.
Otherwise there's like no practice.
Yeah. The comment here for those who are listening to this, if there's anybody out there, that's so weird to not know, right? Is anybody out there? The comment here was that kind of anecdotally, at least, that we say that autism is pretty common among programmers, and yeah, you want security, you want predictability in your life, kind of mess in any sense, be it emotional or uncertainty or even physical mess all around you. You don't want that. Everything needs to be so and so, right? And so yeah, so it doesn't fit everybody, because you're throwing yourself into something there's more unknowns than you're used to. And most of us would like, as we talked about yesterday, would like to be in control. At least we want, at the very least, if I'm not in control, give me the illusion that I'm in control, so at least I can feel good about the whole thing. Right? And Agile, it needs, as we will see a little bit later here, it's not just about building software. Agile even though it came out of the pain caused by our poor ability to build software, to deliver on our promises, you can apply Agile to a marketing project. It's about how you do something. What it is that you do has nothing to do with it, really. So Agile is a way to manage a project, be it a marketing project, a recruiting project, or a software development project. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with software. Right? It just came from there. So, why does it fail? Because often it fails. It's difficult to do it. The company philosophy, this is from the same survey as before, the company philosophy or culture is at odds with core Agile values. The company might say documentation is important. Agile says, yeah, it's not unimportant, but collaboration is much more important, or whatever it was. Working software is much more important than documentation. That's what we focus on. Because that's how we make money. But you still have many organizations where other things have value or assign some form of value, but they're not really sure how this translates into money in the end, which is why they're doing what they're doing in the first place, unless they also feel that they have some purpose, right? They're actually contributing something to this world. It doesn't have to be to the world. It could be to the community around you. Contribute. What are you doing to contribute? You were gifted with, oh, here I go again. You were gifted with this life, right? So what are you doing in return? Right? I mean, it's not for you to take, you know? It's for you to share. Right? And the more you share, the more there is. It's like an never-ending well of goodness, this whole thing. Okay, so philosophy is important. The company culture, lack of experience, lack of management support, lack of support for cultural transition, yeah, etc., etc. And I will go into some specific pitfalls here. Yeah. Micromanagement, often in a culture, the managers somehow feel that they need to tell people what to do. Right? In Agile, as you're going to see, you're going to have self-managing teams. The team decides how to do things. Normally you have a manager there who's supposed to know better, who's telling you do this, you do this, you do that, and then we put it together and then I deliver it. Right? That doesn't work in Agile anymore. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you've thought about this, pretty much any big organization today is depicted, typically, it can be depicted by a hierarchical org chart, right? We have the boss at the top, and then you have the workers at the bottom, right? So you have management, the management structure on top, right? Then you have these workers at the bottom, and this hierarchical management structure, this came about sometime in the 1800s, when at the bottom, the workers, they didn't know what to do, right? They needed directives. Well, it came actually, I think, from when they built the railroads in the U.S., that they needed directives because they didn't know what to do because there was somebody else higher up who knew where the rails were going to go, right? And they needed to communicate that to them somehow. So they needed to give them directives. Well, today, the workers in most organizations are knowledge workers. These are not people with low education who are not capable of cognitive ability. Right? These are highly powered, from a cognitive perspective, individuals. And you know this yourself. You don't react so well to somebody telling you exactly what to do. Right? We rather want to be told, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? Why are we doing this? What are we trying to accomplish? You tell me that, I figure out how to do it. Right? So this traditional way of organizing a big group of people in order to accomplish something together, which a corporation is, and public organizations too, that old way of organizing is now at odds with the desires of the people in the organization. So that model doesn't work anymore. It's history. That's why we see a lot of companies now who are flattening out the management structure. Right? They don't need so many managers anymore. You don't need all these managers who are keeping track of what is being done and what should be done, because the ones who do the job are perfectly capable of making those decisions. Right? So there's a dramatic change happening in how organizations are actually structured. At Google, I had one colleague who had 62 direct reports reporting into him. 62 people. And 50 of them are probably A+ students from top US universities. Right? Clearly, it's practically impossible for this guy, my colleague, to give directives to all these people. Right? So you rely on that they know what to do. You get higher level directives within those, as long as you kind of adhere to organizational guidelines with which technology stack you're going to use, etc., to build things. They are left alone to do what they want to do. So micromanagement is a problem. Individual reward systems. This is, as we will see, this is team-based work. Individuals don't matter. If the team fails, the individual fails. So you can no longer have team-based, individual-based compensation reward systems. Right? It needs to be team-based. Transparency. Right? It provides this visibility, right? Visibility in what is being done. Everybody can see at any point in time what somebody is working on, what they have done. Transparency is not always comfortable for people. Right? They don't want everybody to know exactly what they're doing, especially at the top. Because, the higher you are in an organization, the more insecure you are. There's this, have you heard of this Peter principle? The Peter principle says, and I've seen this in action so many times, says that you advance in an organization until you reach a position where you're incompetent. And then you spend your time protecting your position in the hierarchy. Right? So the ones at the top, they are the most insecure ones. They're constantly waiting to be outed, right? Emperor's new clothes, right? That he doesn't know anything. Right? So transparency is uncomfortable. Standing and falling with a team. Typically not in the culture of organizations. Many organizations say, you know what, we're different. We're different from the other organizations. So this agile stuff, that might work over there for them. But, here we do things this way and this way and this way, and this is diametrically opposite to agile. So, well, maybe we can take a few ideas and use them. But guess what? Everybody is different. We're all special. But we're more similar than different. You've probably seen this. You'll see it again. This has to do with lack of end user involvement. This is a very common pitfall, that you make assumptions about what the customer actually wants. You're not fully understanding what they want, or the customer doesn't fully understand what they want. So this is what the customer explained they wanted, and this is what they really wanted. Right? You build something entirely different, and we'll see it further. This, we can skip that one. This has to do with lack of certainty. Normally, when you in the traditional process, you define the plan, you say that this is what we're going to do. Now everybody knows what we're going to do. In Agile, you say, well, this is the direction we're going. Right? We're going to stop at regular intervals and see, hey, does this still look like the right direction? Mr. Customer or Miss Customer? If not, okay, maybe you want me to adjust direction a little bit. Okay, we'll go in that direction for a little bit. And then we stop again and do a reality check and see, is this better? Right? Or maybe we need to turn a little bit more, or maybe this is just fine. And that uncertainty is both frustrating for the developers on the team that don't really know, those who want to know exactly where we're going, who are not satisfied with the direction, but they want to know exactly where they will end up. And the product manager, who is also wants to know where they're going, but in this methodology, they don't really know for sure. Right? And this is depicting a product manager who is not clear, who's too busy, who's not clear with the priorities. Because the thing is that the product manager decides what will be done. If the product manager hasn't prioritized correctly, right, it's shit in, shit out. Right? If you're not building the most important thing, well then you're not going to deliver the most important thing. And that is the product manager's responsibility, to know what is the most valuable thing to build. So, Scrum. I'm just going to read this. It's an agile process that allows us to focus on delivering the highest business value in the shortest time. It allows us to rapidly and repeatedly inspect actual working software every 2 weeks to 1 month. We're going to have 1 week here because this is kind of an educational setting. The business sets the priorities. Teams self-organize to determine the best way to deliver the highest priority features. We'll go into details on these. And every week for you, anyone can see real working software, decide whether they want to release it, or enhance it, iterate, one more iteration, to refine it, modify it a little bit. So, traditional is kind of this way of building software, right? The client says, I want to go there, right? These are the requirements. I want to go there. I want you to take me there. It just turns out that they're not happy if they get there, right? They think that this is where they want to go, but once they end up there, they're not happy. They're not satisfied. And as I alluded to yesterday, right? Well, you can say, well, that's what you told me. That's where you told me to go. I delivered. The client is going to say, yes, you delivered, and you will never see the client again. Because your top priority is to do more business, keep a happy client in order to do more business with that client, regardless of whether you give them what they said they wanted. That's irrelevant. This is business, right? You want to make more money. You want more of their money, right? Keep them happy. Top priority. So, in Scrum, what you do is you set out in a direction. After one sprint, which is one iteration, 1 week for you guys, you show what you've done to the client. This could be, say, build a, I don't know, authentication functionality in the application, whatever it is, right? You show it to the client says, yeah, but let's move a little bit. Let's change the direction a little bit. So we move a little bit there. And eventually, by adjusting our direction based on the client's satisfaction, we will end up somewhere where the client is happy. Right? Not what they wanted, but they are happy. That's our goal. Another way of looking at it is this is how you typically build things. Right? In traditional, you build the pieces, and then you start to connect the pieces, right? And eventually get the product. Here, you build something that's somewhat useful, right? Improve it a little bit, 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 and you're done. Yes?
So, in our project, basically, you are the client and we're meeting with you every week to show what you've done and which direction to go. Basically.
Correct. Correct.
In real life out there, how easy it is to be having these meetings with the clients and users to get feedback?
Well, it's very difficult to get hold of users, because especially in a kind of in consulting kind of role, right? Where say that I want to buy a system, right? So I find somebody who can build that system for me, who can deliver that system to me. What they want this system built. The only thing they're interested in is receiving this system at the date that you have promised to deliver the system, right? In the meantime, while you build this system, they're dealing with their stuff, right? They're running a business, right? So they're busy doing their stuff. So if you tell them that I would like to show you what I've done so far, so you can see if we're on the right track here or not, typically they're too busy. So this is a problem, and it even, if you take this one step further, it's a problem with contracts, right? Because typically when you place an order for a system like this with somebody, you sign a contract with them, right? But now what we want, in order for Agile to really hum and do well, we would like to have a contract with our mutual responsibilities to each other, right? We would like to have it built into the contract that you make yourself available X hours a week, because otherwise I cannot guarantee that I deliver something you're happy with, right? And this is, I think it was even 5 years ago, I went to a seminar where a lawyer spoke, and the lawyer was speaking about sprints and Scrum, because he says we need to understand this, because one of there's so many lawsuits resulting from dissatisfaction among customers who have bought an IT product from somebody. And so if you are now starting to build this in a different way, these changes need to be reflected in how contracts look. So there is a whole area now called Agile contracts, where there is a mutual responsibility. It's not kind of one-sided as it is today. Okay, so to kind of, yeah, we have time. So Scrum started as early as '93. Sutherland and Schreiber are the main guys. There's now any number of books on Scrum. I actually spent a lot of time with this guy when we engaged him as an Agile coach when we implemented Agile. Run everywhere, right? It's not just kind of internet-based companies anymore. It's everybody. And story has it that Microsoft actually used Scrum to develop Microsoft Project, which is a non-agile project management tool. It's kind of ironic. If it's true, I don't know. Nevertheless, it's a good story. So I'll continue to tell it. And it's not only for the kind of online services and stuff, it's for everything. Right? There's no particular type of system that lends itself better to Scrum or Agile than any other. So let's just repeat these. So Agile Manifesto, we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. As I said, it doesn't mean that Agile says don't document. It says document what you need to document. Right? If you come up with a design for something that the team needs to be aware of when they implement something, of course it needs to be documented, right? So you can look at it somewhere, right? But do not document more than you need to document. That's the whole idea. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I've heard of companies there was one company that did some work for AOL many years ago, and they went to AOL's offices, sat in the lobby. AOL didn't respond to them. They said, we need to meet because we don't know if we're building what you really want here. They said, well, we don't have time for that. They went to the lobby and wait for them to walk in, grab them. Right? Because they don't want to, and even though it is for their own sake, right? It's also for your sake because you want them to be happy, but it's primarily for their sake, really. And responding to change over following a plan. So don't be dumb and ignore empirical data, right? Well, this is my plan. Well, it's contradicted by what we see here. Well, I don't care. This is the plan. Follow the plan. It's just foolish at best. So essentially, so this is the traditional analysis, design, code, and test. And in Scrum, you're doing a little bit of everything all the time. So of course, before you can start to design something, you need to analyze and see what it is, the problem you're going to solve. So you do start your analysis. When you have enough information, you start the design. When you have enough of a design, you start the implementation. When you've started the implementation, you start to create test cases. So all these things happen all the time. So, Scrum characteristics. Self-organizing teams, meaning the team decides how to get the job done. Of course, sometimes it's not a free-for-all. The organization you're in might have, and you have already, the stack is fixed, right? You cannot choose another technology to do what we're going to do here. And that's the case in most organizations. They have organizational standards, they have coding standards, they have documentation, commenting standards. So you need to adhere to those, obviously. Just like you need to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, right? There's certain rules that self-organizing doesn't allow you to skip. The product, what you're building, progresses in a series of sprints. You're going to have 1 week sprints. Requirements are captured as items in a list of product backlog. We will see examples of this. No specific engineering practices are prescribed. So how you actually write your code, which IDE you use, doesn't matter. As long as pick something that works for the team. So it progresses in a series of sprints. A constant duration leads to better rhythm. The product is designed, coded, and testing during the sprint. And clearly, if you're going to do this in 1 week, which is really, really kind of ambitious, typically it's like two-week sprints is the most common, I think. But if you pick a small enough feature, right, small enough feature, you should be able to design, code, and test it in 1 week. And during a sprint, right, once you start to work on something, there are no changes. Right? And this is kind of, remember I told you before that the worst thing programmers know is changing requirements, modifications all the time, right? Well, the product folks, so modifications all the time is the worst case for programmers. Modifications all the time is the best case for the product managers because they want to modify it all the time. They get ideas, right? So this is a happy medium. We're saying here, once a week, Mr. Product Manager, you can change your mind completely. Don't care. It's up to you to prioritize what we're going to do for the next sprint. But during this sprint, you have no right to communicate with the team. Of course, you need to be available if the team has questions, but you cannot talk to them. So the team gets, in 1 week chunks, they get peace and quiet. Right? You see the happy medium here. So it's, and the product managers, they cannot modify things all the time, but once a week they can modify things. So it's to satisfy both parts. So this is how it works. And we'll spend the entire afternoon related to Scrum, so don't worry about if there's something that doesn't register right now. So the product owner, which is the terminology you use in Scrum for the product manager, the person who's responsible for the business for this product, right? The product owner gets input from end users, customers, the team itself, who's actually doing the work, and other stakeholders, right? About what do we want to add to this product? So think as easy as if you think that there already is a product, you want to add features to this product, right? These features are formulated, and we'll very specifically how you formulate these, and put into a product backlog. This product backlog is prioritized. So the most important things, according to the product owner, who is the representative for the end users, is at the top of this product backlog, right? In order of priority, here are features, right? At the sprint planning meeting, which we're going to have Thursday and Friday, depending on which team you're in, the team looks at this product backlog of requirements, of features, and they decide which ones they're going to do. The team decides which one of these, adhering to the order here, right, decides what they're going to do in the next week. The product owner has no right to say they're going to try, and I will try, just to mess with you, to make you take on more work than you think you can do. Right? But the team should take on the amount of work they feel that they're capable of doing. And then these features are expressed as something called user stories, are then broken down into technical tasks. Right? What do we need to do technically in order to pull off this feature? So this is now the sprint backlog. So the sprint backlog is technical tasks. Right? Now the sprint starts. So the developers, the programmers here, or team members, they pick tasks from this list of tasks and they carry out these tasks. Right? Complete these tasks. Every day the team meets, and we're gonna look at what's being said in this meeting. Every day the team meets, as I said before, purpose of that meeting is for everybody to, as I say, be on the same page, right? Everybody knows what's going on here. A Scrum Master is kind of a project manager in this context. And then after, say, 1 week now, after 1 week, you're going to have 1 week, you're going to present what you've done to the product owner, and even better if you have customers around, real customers around. You're going to present what you've done. So this is the review. And the product owner here says, yay or nay. Right? Yay. Looks good. Right? It's ready. We can ship this if we want to. Or we might say that, you know, this one feature is too little to ship, so I want to wait another sprint or two so we have this other feature, we can roll them out. at the same time. Or they might say, you know, it's almost right, but let's modify it a little bit. Okay, so then the product owner puts a new story here on a product backlog about what modification they wanted to what has already been done here, right? And this modification could be based on, could be because the environment has changed, or the product owner has changed their mind, or whatever it is, right? It's okay. Changes are okay. Remember? Embrace the changes. And then, after the review, there's this retrospective where the team reflects on, I need to speed up here. Okay, so the different roles in Scrum are product owner, Scrum Master, a team. We have these 4 meetings: the sprint planning meeting, the review meeting at the end of the sprint, a retrospective at the end of the sprint, and then the daily meeting. And what's being produced here is the product backlog, the sprint backlog, determining which tasks you're going to do in this particular sprint based on the stories that you've selected, and a burn down chart, which is showing how you're progressing during the sprint. We'll go through all those. So the roles: product owner, you have a product owner, business guy, a Scrum Master, and the team itself. The product owner is responsible for the features of the product, so expressed as user stories. Is responsible for deciding when to release what and when. Responsible for profitability, the ROI of the product. Prioritizes, adjusts between every iteration. When you walk into the sprint planning meeting, that list, product backlog list of stuff, needs to be prioritized. And accepts or rejects work results. Scrum Master is responsible for enacting Scrum values and practices. So essentially, responsible for making sure that the process works. Responsible for removing barriers. If the team says, you know what, in order to do this, I need another virtual server somewhere. I need a virtual server somewhere to do something. Well, if the person who needs this, the team member who needs this virtual server, doesn't know how to get hold of get the virtual server available to the team, then just ask the Scrum Master. Just, can you please take care of this? Because the Scrum Master's responsibility is to smoothen things out, right? Remove stuff, little stuff that is in the way of actually building product. Focus on building product, right? So any hurdles here should get out of the way. Ensures that the team is fully functional and productive. This is enables close cooperation across all roles and functions, and shields the team from external interferences, right? So when the product manager comes to you, you just send them, you just give them a hand like this and tell them, go talk to the Scrum Master. Yeah, but go talk to the Scrum Master. The thing is that the Scrum Master is not a boss at all. The Scrum Master is not a team member who's not expected to produce anything towards the goal of the project, but is there to make sure that the process works, right? Running all the meetings, for example, right? Make sure the process works. The team, typically 5 to 9 people. We're going to have almost 10 people per team here because there's so many of you, and chances are not everybody's going to show up. Not everybody's going to show up, and so people will either drop off or they will be kicked off due to poor performance or not adhering to the Scrum rules or something. So I would imagine that we're probably going to be down after a few sprints, probably going down to like 8 people per team or something like that. We might be there already. I don't know, because people might not show up. I don't know who's going to show up, but we will know that on Thursday. Teams are cross-functional. So you have all the skills that you need are going to be on the team. That's not always practically possible because you might need, a database administrator to do 2 hours of work for you in order to enable something that you need to do, some functionality. And that doesn't mean that you have this database administrator on your team the entire sprint, but you can kind of bring in external resources every now and then. But essentially, you have a team that should together cover all the skills necessary to do what you need to do. So the team selects the work, as I said before, from the product backlog, what they want to do in this sprint. They decide how to do this. And membership should really not change at all, ideally, because the longer you work together, the better you get to know each other, the more informal ways of communicating is going to be established, and the team is just going to gel after a while. You know? Should we? You know what? It's almost lunchtime. So let me do the. Let me move to. Continue this after lunch, but I promised you this. So these are the time slots. The first week we're going to give an hour and a half, since it might be a little bit rocky, kind of, to get things started. Hopefully, well, we'll see. Maybe we have an hour and a half the second week as well. Hopefully later on we should be able to get away with one hour per week. So the slots that are taken here, let's see, are, come on. Thursday 10:30. Team 5. So, I would like for you, by ideally before we start the next lecture, or maybe at least by the break in the next lecture, tell me which team is going to meet when. Ideally, we're not changing day between weeks. Right? So we're not going to do that, because it's rhythm here, right? So if you start on a Thursday, 1 week is next Thursday. We're not going to have sometimes start on Friday, and then the next week after that we start Thursday the week after that, so we get a 6-day sprint and we get a 4-day sprint. They need to be 5 days. Every sprint is 5 days. So you need to stick at the very least to the day. If you then want to shift times around within a day with other teams, I don't care. You can do that. But that's up to you. Just let me know, so I know whom to expect, when, where. Okay? We'll fix this by this afternoon? All right. Thank you.
Could you switch team 4 to 9 in the morning for Thursday? We just find out that one of the members can't come. Yeah, Thursday morning. Just a Thursday morning. Oh, thank you.
As long as it's not Friday.
Yeah.
And it is important that you check with your fellow team members, right? Because if you haven't done that, they have all the right in the world to give you a hard time. You decide a time without checking with them.
I have a question. I'm not going to be here this upcoming weekend. Would I be able to do it through Skype?
This weekend?
Or sorry, Thursday.
No.
Okay.
Unless you're on team 8.
Okay.
You're not on team 8, right?
Yes, I'm a team 8.
You're team 8.
Oh no, team 7.